everybody, it's Mrs. Kearns, and we are going to go through our notes today. Hopefully you've read the notes at the board and you logged into Canvas and you've opened your sub plans. If you have not picked up a copy of your notes from the sub today, we have lesson 4 or 5 notes. We're going to do those together, and then once you're done and you can show those to the sub, you can pick up your assignment for today. Make sure you get those dated November 28th. Assignment 53, a lot of you got to get that started in class yesterday. If you have any specific questions or I have anything that I want to go over based on what I see from your results, we'll discuss those when I return tomorrow. I do want to revisit the notes on that in periods 1 and, I can't spell here while I'm on the iPad. In periods 1 and 4. Okay, let me start over. There we go. So while we're getting started here, if you could find yesterday's notes, we are going to revisit those briefly just so I can highlight something that I made sure I highlighted in period 5 and 6, and I realized I did not highlight in your class. So periods 5 and 6, you can skip over that part in the video because we did that well in your class. Today you're going to complete these notes on 4 and 5 and 4-6, all about slope. We talked about that a lot yesterday. And the y-intercept, we're going to emphasize that. We've already talked about y-intercept, but we're going to look at these two things together and what they tell us. And we are going to create this new form that we'll be writing things in, the slope-intercept form. The assignment that I'm giving you today is not going to be due until Thursday. That way, if you have questions, you can get that clarified on Wednesday before you have to submit it. We will have notes on Wednesday when I return. It is a shorter day of notes, and the assignment is not super long, but I don't want you to think there won't be any. There's only one assignment between now and Thursday. That will not be the case. If you get your video done and your homework done today in class, then you can be working on your IXL during BEST. Okay, periods 1 and 4. So just a couple of things that I want to reiterate and on yesterday's notes. So if you could take those out really quick, I want to make sure that you understand some of the high points of this word proportional. To be proportional, you got to be 2 things. You got to be linear, which means you have a slope. M equals the slope, right? And you have to be through the origin. Linear and through the origin. Those 2 things have to happen. So one of the things that could happen on your unit test is I could give you lots of pictures and say, is this a function? Is this linear? Is it discrete? Is it continuous? Is it proportional? So this would be an example of something that's through the origin but not linear. So this would not be proportional. Here's an example of a line that's linear, but it doesn't go through the origin. So this is not proportional. Okay, so when you're looking at a picture, to be proportional, it has to go through the origin. Oh, that one didn't. Let's draw that a little better. It can be flat. It can be very steep through the origin here. I'm not drawing my line very well there. It can be negative going through the origin, and it has to be a line. Has to be this and this, not one or the other. And when we have this equation, we know that that is linear because it has a slope, and we know it goes through the origin because 0, 0 satisfies that and is a solution. So we summarized that and sort of talked around it. Later in the day, I kind of wrote this at the top of the notes for yesterday or for Monday, and so I would like 1 and 4 to add that to their notes. Okay? All right, let's get started with today's notes. You should be on the side that is labeled lesson 4.5. And you've got your essential questions up here at the top. What is the y-intercept? How do I find it in graphs and tables? We know what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. We have done that in our quizzes, in our notes, in our activities. You've graphed things and I've said, hey, where's it crossing the y-axis? Because that is always an important point. This is where x is 0 and sometimes referred to as b in word problems. it is referred to as the initial value, where things start at 0. So yesterday we did the riding up the ski lift, and we said, hey, at 0 time on the lift, you want to be at 0 spot on the ground. So that was the initial value. How do you find the slope? Well, we've talked about this for days. This was on the quiz. Slope can be rise over run, or we can use the formula to subtract it. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to look down the page of notes. There are 6 problems right there that I want you to see in the graphs, the tables, or the ordered pairs. What are the slope and the b? And remember, b is another name for the y-intercept. So when it says find b, you're finding the slope for m, and when it says find b, you're finding the y-intercept. So pause the video, and once you have all of those blanks filled in on 1 through 6, restart the video and see how you did. All right, so looking at number 1, I would have picked any 2 points on the line that I could calculate there. And when I calculated those, I would have said I'm going down 2 and right 1. So that would be a negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. Hopefully everybody agrees that's a negative slope going down. It's crossing the y-axis. B's value is 0, 2. 0, 2. When you're writing b, you can write b equals 2. Remember I said you can't write y equals 2 because that's a line. But b equaling 2 would be acceptable. In number 2, I'm looking for the change in the slope. Hopefully you all agree we are going down by 12. Here we are going up by 1. So my change in y is negative 12. And then when I need to find the y-intercept, remember, that is whenever x equals 0. The ordered pair is always 0, some number. So I'm going to look in this table for where 0 is connected, and 0 is right here for x, negative 12y, meaning my b value would be negative 12 as well. In number 3, again, I'm going to look for my change in my y values. Each time here I'm going up 40, and here I'm going up 1. So my slope would be the change in y, 40 over 1. Now, when I'm looking for my b value, my y-intercept, that's when x is 0. And lots of people are like, uh-oh, x is 0 is not in the table. And if x is 0 is not in the table, you have to compute it and put it in the table. How could I get it in the table? Well, I could continue the pattern up. Subtracting 1, subtracting 1, subtracting 1. Here I would be looking at this as subtracting 40 each time. So that would be at 30. That would be my initial value. If I looked at this and looked at the graph of this, this would not be proportional. And how do I know it would not be proportional? Because 0, 30 was that start value. In fact, none of these graphs, 1, 2, or 3, would be proportional. Looking at number 4, again, I'm going to find some places that I can find the slope easy. Now notice my interval. It's not up 3 and over 3. The slope is not 1 here. I'm going up 15, and I'm going over 3. You would need to simplify 15 thirds to 5. I guarantee there are people in the room that did a slope of 1 because you just counted the boxes. You can only count the boxes if the intervals are 1. Y-intercept is where it's crossing the y-axis, negative 15. That ordered pair would be 0, negative 15. Again, a non-proportional amount. A non-proportional graph. Looking at number 5. Number 5 is a word problem. Again, the slope is not 1. You've got to pay attention to your units. It looks like each of these is 15. Right? So if I'm going to do my slope, I would start here at in between 30 and 60. That's probably 45. And I could go up 1 box. which would be up 1 over 1. So up 1 box from 45 to 60 would be 15. If you don't want to do in-between things, you could use 30 or 60 here and 90 here. That would be up 30 and over 2. Either way, I'm going to end up with a slope of 15. If I ask you for the meaning of this slope, like we've been talking about, interpreting the slope, does everybody get that that would be $15? How do I know dollars? Because that's that label. Per hour. You're getting paid $15 an hour. Pretty good job. And it looks like you get a starting bonus or a starting salary of $45. So even if you don't show up for the day, you get $45. This would not be an example of a proportional relationship because even if you don't work, you're making $45 to start. When you have a list of ordered pairs, pick any 2 ordered pairs you want. You can pick any in the table that works for you. I'm just going to take the first 2. And I'm going to do -3 minus 0, which is going to give me -3. And then I'm going to do -2 minus -4. Good practice for some of you that are really bad at your integer work. That's going to give me a 2. My slope is going to be -3 halves. And if I do that between any other points, that would be 3 and 2. I would end up with a -3 halves. Now, again, whenever I'm looking for the y-intercept, remember what we said earlier, that's always when x is 0 and y is some number. So I need to look down my table till I find that value, and that happens there. B would be -6, 0, -6. So part of your homework today, all you're doing is finding m's and finding b's from a variety of ways. We've been finding slope now for multiple days. That's review. Just got to remember that b is where it's crossing the y-axis, looking for it in a picture, or finding it in an ordered pair or a table is necessary there. So let's apply it. Which function had the greatest initial value? So we have function A, function B, and function C. The greatest initial value is the y-intercept. And the y-intercept, can't spell, is always when x is 0 and y is some number. So in this one, the y-intercept is -2. In this one, the y-intercept is 4, meaning this is crossing the graph at -2. This one would cross the graph at +4. And this one, C, is crossing it at 5. Who had the greatest initial value? That would be C. Said who had the least initial value? Least would be A. Can't answer any of those questions unless you can find their initial value. And looking at number 7, which function is increasing at the greatest rate? This would be the slope, like we did yesterday in the activity about the ski lifts, who was rising the fastest. So what I would need to do is find the slope here, and find the slope here, and find the slope here, and figure out which was the greatest. So in this one, I would do 10 minus 7. And I would do 2 minus 0, and my slope would be 3 over 2. In this one, I would have a slope of up 1, and this would be +1, this would be +3, rise over run, 1/3. And this one I would count on the table, and it looks like this is going up by 1s. This is going 2s, though. That's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's probably really hard to see on your graph paper, but I can tell that's going up by 2 there. So I would be going up 1 and over 2. So my slope would be 1/2. Then I would look at these numbers and say which number is the biggest. Hopefully we all would agree that the first one, function D, which has a slope of 3/2, which would be 1.5, is bigger than 1/3 or 1/2. And so that is just finding and utilizing the slope and finding and utilizing the y-intercept. first portion of your homework tonight is doing exactly those things. All right, let's turn the page and let's get ready to talk about slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form is an equation that puts the m and the b together to give us some important information. M, just like we learned on Tuesday, y equals mx. M is always the slope value, and b is the y-intercept. M could be the change in y over the change in x, and b is always where it's crossing the y-axis. Some other values you can have here: input an x, and determining the match in y value creates an ordered pair in slope-intercept form. So if you're understanding slope-intercept form, or you can follow this model, think of this as a template. All of the problems we just did on the back of the paper, you were finding m, you were finding b. Now I'm going to say take those and put them in the equation and write an equation for a scenario. So looking at number 1, find the slope and the y-intercept of the equation below. Well, whatever number's in front of x is the m. If there's nothing there, remember that's implied 1, so this would be a slope of 1. And the y-intercept is whatever's being added. Now, if it's being subtracted, that means my slope's going to be negative. Or not my slope, my y-intercept's going to be -2. So you're looking for the m value in front of x and whatever's being added to the problem. If something's being subtracted, that means your y-intercept is a negative. And number 2, 2/3 x. Whatever's in front of the x is m, 2/3. And whatever's being added. If nothing's being added, that means I'm adding 0. This would be a line that's proportional. It's going to go through at the origin. And number 3 and 4, pause the video and see if you can fill in the slope from there. So on the front side, you were given pictures and you were given ordered pairs and tables. Now I'm giving you the equation. And if you understand that in the equation, whatever's in front of the x is m, makes finding 3 there and -10 there. Number 4 is a little tricky. It's in a different order. It's really not in slope-intercept form until I put the x term first. Y equals -4x plus 2. It doesn't mean that you can't tell me the slope, -4, and tell me the y-intercept, +2. You just need to make sure that you don't put 2 as the slope. Whatever the coefficient of x is how it is changing. And that constant of proportionality there. Write the equation given the slope and the y-intercept. So now here we were given an equation and we pulled out m and b. Now I'm giving you m and I'm giving you b, and I want you to plug them in. So you're going to take that value and say, well, y equals blank x plus whatever. In this case, 4x and a plus a -5. Hopefully we all know that we're never going to leave plus negative. That would simplify to y equals 4x minus 5. And number 6, y equals, the slope is -4/3 x. The y-intercept is a +1, so plus 1. Number 7, y equals -1x minus 10. Do we write -1 or are -1s implied? 1s are always implied. This would simplify to just -x minus 10. And put stars on 8 and 9. Anytime zeros are in there, that kind of messes things around here. You would have y equals 0x plus 2. And we would not need to leave 0x there, so that would be y equals 2. Hopefully everybody remembers what kind of line y equals 2 is. That's a horizontal line at 2. And number 9, y equals 3/5. That's going to be y equals 3/5 x plus 0. I'm not going to really write plus 0, so I'm just going to write y equals 3/5 x. All this assignment is about is the m and the b. Learning this equation, you need to get this equation ingrained in your brain. You need to study that meaning, and we are going to work with this all week. Wednesday's notes will be about that equation. Thursday's notes will be about that equation. Friday's activity will be about that equation. When you get to Algebra 1, this equation you will work with for an entire semester. So understanding slope, rise over run, where it crosses the y-axis, and how those fit together is very important. These are the same things we had from here. How do we write equations from tables? Well, we're going to figure out the slope. We know how to do that. Figure out the y-intercept where x is 0. We know how to do that. And then we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form. If the y-intercept is not found in the table, set up an equation to solve for b. You can substitute in, and we'll talk about how to get there in that. So let's look at number 10. First thing I'm going to do is find the slope. Here I'm adding 2. And here I'm adding 1. So that means m is going to be 2. The y-intercept is wherever x is 0. So that's going to be at 0, 6. So my equation using those two things would be y equals 2x plus 6, mx plus b. Pause the video and you try 11 and 12. And restart it when you're done. I hope you took the time to follow that. I hope you realize here you're going down by 4 each time. Up by 1 each time. So m equals -4. My y-intercept is 10. My equation would be y equals -4x plus 10. There's really not a lot of calculating in these. It's just identifying the slope from a picture, from a table, from ordered pairs. Figuring out how the change is happening. What is my rate of change? Incidentally, none of these would be proportional because this one's going through at 6 and this one's going through at 10. And as we look at number 12, you're looking where x is 0, not y is 0. None of those are going through at 0, 0. So none of these graphs would be proportional relationships. If I'm looking at my slope, I'm increasing by 50. And here I'm going up by 1. So my equation would be y equals 50x plus 200. 50x plus 200. All of these ordered pairs would be solutions in that equation. You can always plug them in and check to make sure it works. If I just checked this point right here, if I plugged in a 2, I would get 4 plus 6, which is 10. I know my equations are correct because all of the solutions match. So prior to break, I was giving you an equation and you are making the table. Now I'm going to be able to give you a table and you make the equation if you understand the equation of the day, which is y equals mx plus b. Slope and y-intercept. This is going to make graphing so much easier when we get to that tomorrow, because if you understand where it's crossing and you understand what direction, we don't have to make tables anymore. I don't have to plug and chug and do all of those things that were troublesome for some on the quiz. Okay? This assignment is exactly like the notes. You should not be putting your notes away. You should be taking these notes with you and using those to help you. This is not due until class on Thursday. I would get a good start on it today. Work with your teammates at your table. Work on it during best. So if you have questions, right? We will have a notes tomorrow and an assignment. More on slope intercept form, not new stuff, same stuff. But it might clarify some things that you were confused about if you had confusion leading into today. Okay? I will see you in class on Wednesday. I will probably not open the assignment to turn it in until late Wednesday night, and you don't even have to have it in until Thursday morning. So that will be the plan. Hope you had a good day.